Good evening and welcome to Fleetway's Roundup with your boy, the hostess with the mostest, of course, me. And I want to just apologize there for the audio. For some reason, normally the music that I'd be using wanted to be acting up, so that was why there was a lot of pauses, no audio, nothing. I was trying to get to work, and you probably heard it for a brief second come on, but as with all technology, it just decided it wanted to quit on me. But hey, we don't stop for that kind of stuff. We keep it pushing, we keep it rolling, and I got to keep it rolling with all the news that I got for you guys tonight. And well, this is definitely going to be a show. We got to talk about a few little small things, some stuff that's going to be going on, just to keep you guys up to date. But the big main course, the big meal, if you want to say, is going to be us talking about some NBA playoff stuff that's been going on these past few days, because I gotta admit, this has been some interesting playoffs to watch. There's teams that almost look like they were getting ready to get swept, but they didn't. And then you have our first full-blown sweep, but we'll get into that, and then we'll also be talking about the NFL draft as well as a few little news surrounding that. But of course, our first thing we're going to start off with is who here remembers Jamie Foxx's Django movie? I remember that. I remember seeing it at a young age, and I probably shouldn't have seen it at the age I saw it, but I remember it was a fun time. I remember rewatching it as I got older, and all the performances are fun. Jamie Foxx is definitely that character. I think he's the only guy that has played him. And of course, they had announced a couple days ago yesterday on the 27th, that a Django and Zorro crossover movie is in the works. Quentin Tarantino, the guy who directed Django, and I think he might have directed one of the Zorro movies too, but I do know he worked on the comic series that this is going to be based on. He will not direct this upcoming crossover film, but has given Sony his blessing to develop it. So I remember watching, I think Mask of Zorro, the one with Antonio Banderas in there. I remember that was a really fun movie, and like I said, I liked Django Unchained. And now we're going to be getting a movie where both these guys are going to be together. So I think the big questions that got to get kind of pulled out the way is, one, are they going to get Jamie Foxx back to play him? I think he's been the only guy who has played him, so it wouldn't feel right for him not to play him. But hey, you never know what could happen. There's always the scheduling conflicts. He could be already filming for other movies, so they got to get that planned. You just never know. There's always things that could go into it. But then the big one is because there's been multiple people who have portrayed Zorro in different movies. Let's see here. So then that kind of turns into a big thing of who's going to be portraying Zorro. I mean, the most well-known actor who has portrayed him is, of course, Antonio Banderas. But like I said before, there have been other iterations of Zorro, and I think that, let me see. You have Legend of Zorro, Master Zorro. As you can see there's a few others. But yeah, the most recent and most well-known is Antonio Banderas. He was who's played him, so that kind of turns into a big question of, will they bring him back to reprise his role as Zorro, or are they going to get a younger person to play him? I would prefer they get the guy who is the most recent incarnation of Zorro and pair him up with Jamie Foxx. That either way, I hope that they do it right. It seems like that shouldn't be able to fail, but you never know. There's always so many movies that have great ideas on paper, but if you don't have the right director or right writing crew or the right screenwriter, it could all fall apart. Some of us might remember Glass, that movie. That was a big crossover of Split and Unbreakable with Bruce Willis and Samuel Jackson, and then Split with what's his name? David the guy who played Charles Xavier, Professor X in those more recent X-Men movies, him. And they combined it for Glass. It sounded like it should have been a good movie on paper. They had M. Night Shyamalan back. I don't even know how to say his name right, so I apologize if I said it wrong, but his name is a doozy. But they had him back directing the movie. It seemed like it shouldn't have failed, but something clearly happened. It failed. It flopped. and everybody ended up feeling pretty disappointed with this big crossover movie. So you guys never know, but what you guys share your opinions in the chat and comment. What do you think about this Django Zorro crossover movie that is in the works that won't be having Quentin Tarantino working on it, but he has given his okay for them to develop this film? Share that in the chat in the comment below. Next thing we're going to talk about here, it's just some brief video game news. This is pretty big because of the kind of the implications of what this is having. In these past couple of days, people have been noticing something after a huge update hit PlayStations all around, where people got a new update that was forced on their PlayStation 5s, and they started to read terms of service and noticed some writing that would suggest something being something afoot. As this post says here from MBG on Twitter, one of my viewers contacted PlayStation support about the 30-day DRM update for PlayStation 4 and 5 games. The response they got makes it sound like this is not a mistake or bug, and this is intentional. They describe it as a technical feature. Sony still hasn't officially responded. If you don't know what's going on, is that people notice in the terms of service where it's referring to digital games that essentially these digital games you buy, you have a 30-day window that in those 30 days, and we'll even read in the response from the technical support team of PlayStation, but apparently what people have noticed is that supposedly what it's saying is that in those 30 days, if you're not online or apparently don't play those games, PlayStation now has the right to retract those games even though if you spent money on it. And that's not good, because we had been hearing rumors circulate for years that from Nintendo, there's been quotes from Nintendo, Microsoft, that they're essentially starting to treat the value of online games as worthless, essentially. That if you buy what was even one of the biggest controversies, I think 2 years ago, was a statement that was made as, oh, you buying these games online, sure you paid money for it, but that's not you owning the game. That is you essentially renting the game from us, and we reserve the right to essentially revoke you from playing that game ever again, taking it away, etc., etc. And that set off a lot of people, because it's like, well, you're charging the exact same price for the physical editions, and now you're making these consoles, not all of them, but you're still making consoles that aren't compatible with these physical games, so we have to buy them digitally. And now you're saying that you reserve a right to now take it from us even if we spent our hard-earned money on that game. But it kind of went quiet. Things went MIA, but people never forgot. And now PlayStation has pumped out this update where people are reading the terms of service, essentially telling people that these online games that they're buying, it's not theirs to own, and that PlayStation apparently can take it back. We're going to read what they said here just so we can get a better understanding, but it sounds exactly like how I explained it here. Let's see. It was never announced, and no one agreed to have to check in every 30 days and not have access offline. It is not mentioned in the term of service. When you purchase a game digitally, you should not have to authenticate every 30 days. So yeah, that's what people are finding in the terms of service, is that if you apparently do not go and check in or something with the game you bought or authenticate yourself, they can apparently revoke your ability to play that game. And that's not good. That is not good at all, because you are essentially, I feel like, even as he's saying, so I guess I even got that wrong. There's nothing in the terms of service saying that people have to do this. But if they're implementing this kind of stuff, this is just PlayStation doing it first. It's soon. If they're doing it now, that means it's only a matter of time until probably the Switch consoles do it, Xbox consoles do it, and sooner or later we're going to be in a day and age where even if you pay hard-earned money, 70, 80 something dollars on a digital video game, they're going to see it as, well, you're just renting it from us. And if we decide that you aren't really playing this game, that's what they're pretty much saying. If we feel like you're not really playing this game and it's just sitting there, we're going to revoke your access to it, and you'll never be able to play this game. And guess what? You aren't getting that money back, because we can't let you get the money back. So it's really, that's insane. And the support replied with this. We understand your concern on this matter. While there hasn't been a formal public announcement from PlayStation, which is very, very slimy of them, that they pumped out an update with this new terms of service or this new way of how they're going to do things, but have not publicly announced anything, is very shady. The introduction of the 30-day DRM timer is meant to be a technical measure. Exactly. There has not been an official announcement from Sony, and no one agreed to this and still made purchases unknowingly with this restriction. This is blocked out. Maybe the next picture might have it. Something legal grounds for a large lawsuit. Yeah, so like they said, there is a very high chance that because you did not make a public announcement of this and you are actively letting people go in, buy these games, unknowing of these changes you're doing, there could be a massive lawsuit coming against PlayStation, which I hope it is. I hope it is, because I pray this doesn't happen. And I know that there was a art to buying just a physical game, but we're reaching a point where they're forcing physical to not be the norm anymore, from the prices being more than if you got it online to some of the consoles making it where, well, you could buy this cheaper version of the console, but you can't use the physical edition of games. You have to buy it online. So they're trying to push the physical gaming out while also doing shady stuff where people essentially don't own anything they buy. And that's just not a good look. This was their final response until I guess they stopped talking to the person. Thank you, so-and-so, for your interest on the 30-day timer that is being applied to all new purchases. Affected content, games purchased digitally after the March 2026 update. Offline functionality. If the console does not connect to the internet within 30 days, the license expires and the game may refuse to launch until a connection is restored. Primary console restrictions. Setting a console as primary does not bypass this 30-day requirement. The 30-day is a valid period and is not a sign of an account restriction or anything like that. That is BS. That, like they said, this is a fan of theirs or one of their viewers that contacted them. So of course they're going to use that kind of language. But still, like they said, this is complete BS. So you mean to tell me that so for PlayStation users, if they don't go online for a certain amount of days to play or authenticate a game that they purchased online digitally, they can essentially block you out from playing that game again until you hop back online. So then that also adds the fact of, if you have a bad internet connection or your internet goes out, essentially you're screwed. You won't be able to get on that game because it's going to essentially, especially if it's a game that doesn't require any kind of online access, so no online multiplayer, nothing of the sorts, that it don't matter. If you're not connected to the internet, you ain't gonna play that game, and you just wasted your money on a product that you can't even have access to. This is spelling a large lawsuit that could be coming towards Sony and PlayStation if they either don't retract this or they find some kind of medium ground. And even if they find a medium ground, that's still gonna make people upset. But this could turn into a lawsuit if they don't handle this correctly. And someone even broke this down a little bit more. PlayStation just confirmed it's intentional. You bought a game, you paid full price, go offline 30 days, it locks you out. Here's the part that should scare you. No public announcement, not mentioned in terms of service, primary console doesn't help, affects all purchases after March 2026. PlayStation support called it a technical measure. They used this clip from Breaking Bad with Hank. Hank, when I think this is when he starts to put two and two together of Walter being Eisenberg. And yeah, you're just seeing his reaction. Like, that's scary. The fact that they push this update out with no proper announcement and no mention. It's a shady kind of business that people now, not knowing what they now know, may have made purchases after this date, and now all those purchases are under this new contract of, well, if you're not online for 30 days, you ain't gonna play this game and it'll be locked out until you get an internet connection. That's insane. But we don't want to stay on this long because I know we got other topics that are going to take up pretty much the rest of the show, but I had to talk about this because this has a major ripple effect on the gaming industry, and PlayStation is doing it first. And I fear that it's only a matter of time until Microsoft starts trying to do this or do something similar, or Nintendo tries doing something similar. This is not good. This is not good. It's already bad enough that game prices are going up, but now you're implementing something that could lock people out from playing the games that they purchased. Not a good look, PlayStation. But share your opinions in the chat and comment below. What do you think about this huge change coming to gaming as a whole from PlayStation? And what do you think? Do you think that this means it's going to be a downhill spiral for other industries and other gaming companies? Or do you think this is a PlayStation only thing? Like I said, share what you think about this, because if we don't spread the word on it, everybody else is going to get too comfortable and they're going to start doing things that could end up affecting gaming as we know it, for all my gamers out there. But we're going to go and move on to one of our first big topics here, and that is the ongoing NBA playoffs. We have talked about it for a little bit here. The last that we talked about, we saw there were 1s and 1s, some 2 and 1s, etc., etc. Well, things are starting to heat up as now our most recent games from these past few days, currently right now, we had our most recent scores are the OKC Thunder. They have completely shut out the Suns. Hey, I mean, at least you made it, Phoenix. You made it to the playoffs, so you get a participation trophy. You get a participation trophy, but dang, they got swept. OKC, the former NBA Finals champions, they are on a roll. They have completely swept them. 4-0. They will move on to the next round. The Nuggets and Timberwolves, things were not looking good as the Timberwolves had a 3-1 lead. I almost thought that the Nuggets were going to be the outstanding team, and yet the Timberwolves have just pulled a rug pull here. But thankfully, the Nuggets, they did win their last game where Nikolai Jokic, he balled out in that game and was able to will his team to bringing it to 3-2. So keeping his team thankfully alive from possibly getting swept. So we'll have to see how that goes in the next one. There was some bad from that game involving Anthony Edwards, as he did suffer a knee injury, and it looks like he can miss multiple weeks. So now, considering that Anthony Edwards is going to be out for probably the rest of the series, they have to beat the Nuggets in this next game, because if they allow the Nuggets to come back on them, this could get bad and the Nuggets could pull a comeback victory. But we'll have to definitely see how that turns out. One of the other games, man, oh man, oh man. You know what? No, I don't want to talk about this one yet. I want to save that as last because I got some opinions on that. But we got the Spurs and the Trailblazers, who will be playing today at 8:30 p.m. Their series is being led 3-1. The Spurs are absolutely whooping on the Trailblazers. We know that Wembanyama, he suffered a concussion during one of the games, and it was looking like all hope was lost. But the last game, even with Wembanyama not on the court, they were still playing at a high level, and he's been cleared from concussion protocol, and he will be playing in tonight's game. So this could be it for the Trailblazers. If they don't win this game and make it 3-2, then they're going to be out. A game that's currently going on right now is the Hawks in the Knicks. That game is tied. It has been a weird back and forth where it honestly feels like the Knicks should be winning this game. It feels like they should. It feels like they are the overall better team, and yet they're having these mistakes that are clearly costing them. And now, because they've been having mistakes that are costing them, they're now sitting at a 2-2 tied series where no matter who wins this game, it still is going to probably go to Game 6, where that game will get decided either with a tie that will move on to Game 7 or a game that ends there. But we'll have to see. And then one of the other matchups here is a game that's currently going on with the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers as they are facing off against each other. The Celtics leads the series 3-1. They've been looking like a team to beat. they've been looking like they're on fire, but they did sadly let the 76ers come back and win, which they should have easily had a sweep, but they didn't, and now the 76ers are seemingly alive, so we'll have to see how this game turns out for the Celtics. Can they close this out, as I think they really should, or are they going to keep playing around with their food and let the 76ers have hope? Another game for tomorrow is the Magic and the Pistons. Orlando is currently leading that game against Detroit 3-1, so we'll have to see, can they close this out, or will they allow the Pistons to stay alive? Another game for tomorrow is going to be the the Toronto Raptors and the Cleveland Cavaliers, as they will be facing off 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and we will be seeing how this game turns out, because it is tied. This is a game that it feels like it's been blow for blow. 1 minute you think one team should be having the lead, and then the other team starts coming back. I don't know how this is going to turn out. We all know James Harden, who was formerly a Rocket, then went to the Clippers, is now a Cavalier. He's been having a solid season with the Cavaliers, and so we'll have to see, can he step up to the plate, because that's something I've been seeing from Cavaliers fans, is that they are feeling like he's not putting his best foot forward for this team to be able to win. But the game series I got to talk about is this one right here. The Rockets and the Lakers. This is one I have to talk about, because this was a game where, going into this playoffs, you had the Lakers who had Austin Reeves, Luka Doncic injured, and then you had 40-something-year-old LeBron James being the only reasonable to good player who was playing in this team for this game. And it was just like, okay, this looks like the Lakers are going to get swept. You got the Rockets with possibly Kevin Durant, and then a solid team that was in the playoffs last year. So everybody had the Rockets winning. But man, oh man, LeBron James, he is carrying this Lakers team to victory. And the game was we had the series at 3-0. Last week, it looked like the Lakers were going to win this. And yet, even when Kevin Durant came back from injury, the Lakers still whooped on the Rockets. And it just was not looking good, but the Rockets found a way to keep this alive, and tomorrow is going to be a big one, because this will be if the Lakers close, and especially because Austin Reeves is looking like he's going to be returning for this game, as well as possibly Luka Doncic. So the Rockets, I just don't see this happening, but who knows? Lakers could end up fumbling this. But my thing I wanted to talk about briefly before I do get into the big meal of this episode is this trade. And that was the trade for Kevin Durant. In July 2025, before the season started, Kevin Durant was traded from the Phoenix Suns to the Houston Rockets, where the Rockets traded Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 overall pick in the 2025 draft, and multiple second-round picks to secure the superstar. When I saw this trade, I did not like it. I didn't like this trade. Now, while I'm not a basketball person, I do pay attention to stuff. And I'm going to tell you this. In the 2025 playoffs, I remember watching the Rockets play my Warriors that had Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and the most recently acquired Jimmy Butler. I thought we were a really solid team, and I thought we would sweep the Rockets, and yet they gave us a run for our money. Now, we did beat them and move on in the playoffs, but the Rockets was a really good team. They had a really good young team with Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks, and they looked like they could have gone pretty good, but we were able to, my Warriors were able to pull out the win. When I saw this trade, I didn't like it. And the reason I did not like this trade was because I felt the Rockets were giving up way more than what they were gaining. And no offense to Kevin Durant, he was part of he was part of our big playoff run with the Warriors when it was him, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green. That was a squad. But as good of a player as he is, and I think he'll definitely end up in the Hall of Fame as a great basketball player. But I just felt like the Rockets were giving up more than what they were gaining. And I felt the Rockets would have been better off if they kept Jalen Green, kept Dillon Brooks, kept that number 10 pick to go out there and draft another young, solid player to round out this team and make another playoff push. They were already in the playoffs with the players they already had, and I guess the Rockets in their head thought, let's go and trade two of these young players who are part of the playoff bound team and go for a guy who's, no offense to Durant, but a guy who's older. And I guess they thought he was the final piece of the puzzle. And we're seeing, while sure, they made it back to the playoffs with Durant, they look worse than what they did last year. And that's not a good look. And the worst part about it is Kevin Durant's age came to bite him. He hasn't played in the majority of these playoff games. And even when he did come in, he has no connection with this Rockets team. I just don't see it. When I watch it, they look all over the place. When he finally came back from his injury, he looked terrible. He did not look like he had any kind of connection with his players, his teammates. It just looked all out of whack. And now he's supposedly injured again. And this just comes back to where could possibly go down as, now some people might try to go into the chat and say, oh, trust me, you haven't seen the worst of it. But I'm like, I feel like this is one of the worst NBA trades that we've seen. Like I said, the Rockets lost more than they gained. They got a superstar in Kevin Durant who is older and lost some future superstars in Jalen Green and Dillon Brooks and the number 10 pick and second-round picks. I think this is going to go down as a really bad trade. I do think that the Rockets are going to lose this game against the Lakers. And already there's reports and people suggesting that the Rockets could already be planning to move on from Kevin Durant. And that's really going to solidify this as one of the worst trades in the NBA, where they wasted all these picks on a guy that could not take them over the hump. And I think the Phoenix Suns walked away with, now, yeah, sure. Are they getting swept? Did they get swept by the Thunder? Of course they did, but it's the Thunder. You can't expect much. But the fact that the Phoenix Suns, a team that did not make the playoffs last year, after this trade with the Rockets, getting Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, that number 10 pick, and all those second-round picks, they built a solid enough squad to make a playoff run, to make a playoff appearance. So when you look at that, the fact that both teams in the trades made it to the playoffs, there's that. So they both won in that aspect. But the fact that one team that didn't make it to the playoffs last year, but because of this trade made it to the playoffs, and a team that made it to the playoffs last year made it back but look worse than they did last year, I think the Rockets 100% got fleeced. And for anybody that doesn't know, fleece is a term we use when another team obviously oversold a player for picks. It happened in the NFL. We saw with the Colts. They traded 2 first-round picks to the Jets for Sauce Gardner. And not only did Sauce Gardner barely play, but that was due to injury. The Colts put themselves in a really bad position because they had no first-round picks. And they traded for a guy that got injured and could barely play. So it was just a really bad look, and that's when I started to learn that term, fleeced. And yeah, I would say the Rockets 100% got fleeced. Unless they can prove that they can pull out some miracle run where they magically beat the Lakers, I just don't see it. I don't see the Rockets coming out of this playoff run with them winning, pulling off some miracle. I sadly see them losing, and I honestly would not be surprised if Kevin Durant is on the move again, and this will seriously go down as one of the worst trades. But hey, Put your opinions in the chat or the comment. Do you think I'm ranting? Do you think I'm wrong? Or do you agree, for anybody that has been paying attention to the NBA? Do you think that this was a bad trade on the Rockets' part and they should have stuck with their guns? They should have stuck with Jalen Green. They should have stuck with their young core and just went and drafted another player and probably would have been way better off. But again, that's just my opinion. Share your opinions down below in the chat and the comments. What do you think about this trade overall? And do you think the Rockets got fleeced? But we're going to go move on to our big NFL section. As once again, like I said earlier, we got some stuff to talk about here after and before the draft. And that first thing is, you know it, I know it, we always got to talk about them, and that is the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys have once again found themselves in the headlines. You might remember last week I did talk about, it was reported that CeeDee Lamb had reportedly, by Adam Schefter, a very, very revered and loved reporter, had said on the day of the draft that George Pickens had signed his franchise tag. This had everybody's ears perk up. Everybody's eyes were glued to the screen during the draft because everybody was like, okay, if he signed that franchise tag, we knew that meant that the Cowboys must have found a trade partner or were getting ready to trade George Pickens to another team. Well, the draft passed all 3 days. No trade happened with the Cowboys. I mean, they made some pick swaps here and there, but no trade involving George Pickens. And then from a Cowboys reporter, it turns out George Pickens did not sign. He did not sign the franchise tag. And this is not a good look on Adam Schefter, because you were supposed to be a reliable reporter and you reported on something like this. And what makes this even worse on Adam Schefter is he went on the Pat McAfee show and essentially doubled down on the report, saying that, oh yeah, George Pickens signed his franchise tag. We don't know what's going to happen. We know he wants to get traded. He wants that contract. They're not going to give him that contract. A trade is going to happen. He doubled down that he signed it. But then again, that Cowboys reporter came out and was like, no, he did not sign the franchise tag. Is he planning on it? That's what we've heard. Yes, he's planning on signing it, but he is not. And it's not a good look for Adam Schefter, and especially because I even saw that apparently the Pat McAfee show removed that episode where they discussed about George Pickens and him signing the franchise tag, and they deleted that episode. And I don't blame him, because Adam Schefter, you made him look like a joke. Like, Pat McAfee and them were supposed to be able to report on reliable information involving the NFL and football, and you gave them false information. And not only gave them false information, you doubled down on that false information. And now we've got a huge thing. And now some people are like, oh, this just shows how unreliable Adam Schefter is, because they could easily people got all their people are they got their suspicions, they got their crackpot theories that, oh, the Cowboys probably paying them off to put their names up there so then everybody's got to talk about the Cowboys. And maybe they might be right. We know the Cowboys, while they might suck at being an overall team when it comes to keeping their good players, there's two things normally people acknowledge with them. They're good at drafting, and they're good at making money and staying in the headlines. So this could be a big headline stunt by the Cowboys to stay relevant. Everybody talks about them. And, well, it's working, because here I am talking about them. Here are these reporters talking about them. So, hey. Again, you're going to have to share your opinion. This is a huge mess. We'll have to see, and you know that I will definitely post a YouTube video or a YouTube short if George Pickens does sign that franchise tag, because if that happens, that means he has to either be A, reaching a new agreement with the Cowboys to stay with them for a long-term period, or B, he's going to get traded to another team, and we'll have to just stay on it. You know your boy's going to be staying on it. Keep checking in on the Fl33tway's Roundup here, and I'll be reporting on all of that. But I also see something here on the side. another report, the Jets have reportedly, so I guess a little bit of breaking news on this show, the Jets have reportedly met with free agent QB Russell Wilson. Interesting. The New York Jets hosted a meeting with veteran free agent quarterback Russell Wilson on Monday, according to multiple reports. Per The Athletic, the Jets are considering Wilson as their number 2 quarterback behind Geno Smith for the 2026 season. ESPN reports that nothing is imminent, my bad guys, between the two sides. Wilson is a 10-time Pro Bowler who won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks in the 2013 NFL season, but is far from his prime. He made 11 starts for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024 and played in 6 games, including 3 as a starter for the New York Giants in 2025. This could be interesting, people, if this ends up becoming the case, because not only could this be something funny because Russell Wilson will then be reunited with Justin Fields, the guy that the Jets banked on last year to be their starting quarterback, who I think is still there with them. So they could end up being reunited because they were both with the Pittsburgh Steelers the year before last year, where they were rocking as the 1 and 2 combo. And now they could be reunited with the New York Jets, which that in itself has a whole history of Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But then to add on top of it, Russell Wilson and Geno Smith, 2 former Seattle Seahawks quarterbacks, get to possibly join together on the same team. I don't I don't know how I feel about that. I hope the Jets aren't going to do that, because I would just say stick with Geno Smith as your starter. You did get a young quarterback that we will talk about in the draft section of this portion of this episode. But I think it's just better to stick with Geno Smith, let him maybe tank for you guys, get that high overall first-round pick so that you could go out there and get Arch Manning or Dante Moore in the 2027 draft. But share your opinions down below. What do you think about the possibility that Russell Wilson and Geno Smith and Justin Fields could possibly be sharing a QB room in New York together? We'll have to see how that turns out. But now that we're starting to move over into the draft section, there is something we got to talk about here. Now, as the draft ended, we had one guy who did not get drafted, and that is a very, I wouldn't say famous, he's became more infamous, Diego Pavia. And also I see Humble listening. All right, Humble, Texas. Woo, woo. Humble in the house. Oh, my goodness. I always love when I got some Texas peeps watching and tuning in. We got to have that Texas representation up in here. But as we know, there was a QB that was briefly talked about from Vanderbilt, a quarterback, Diego Pavia, he had a lot going around him because he was one of the finalists for the Heisman. Now, for anybody that doesn't know, the Heisman is essentially the MVP equivalent, the college football equivalent of the MVP award for players in college football. And we all know that the winner of that was the number 1 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, who did go to the Las Vegas Raiders. He won that Heisman Trophy, but one of the runner-ups was Diego Pavia from Vanderbilt. And that was because Vanderbilt is infamously known as a bad college, it is known as a bad college football team. They are always known for not really having a good squad. They normally never have good quarterbacks. And even people always talk about that their system isn't good. They don't have a good playbook, et cetera, et cetera. And yet Diego Pavia went in there. He worked with what he had and had that team have a winning record. He kind of had a similar story to what Shedeur Sanders did in Colorado, where Colorado was a nothing college team. And yet Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders comes in, and they turn this team into a winning team. And now that Shedeur's gone, we all know Colorado is sucking again. But still, I digress. He made a name for himself. Well, people were talking about him. People thought that he would end up getting drafted. And as by Dov Kleiman, this guy, he's not like the biggest known source, but he does talk about NFL news here and there. He put heartbreaking. Vanderbilt star QB Diego Pavia becomes the first Heisman finalist since 2014 to go undrafted. Pavia invited all his friends and family to watch the draft together in hopes of getting a call. The setup for his draft party, where as you can see, this was his setup, a picture of him at Vanderbilt. They're watching the draft. He's got all the hats there to get ready, get set up for him getting picked, and he did not get picked. And while it is sad that he didn't get drafted, there's a little bit more to the story where people aren't feeling all that bad for Diego Pavia. And that is because he's a very, very, very cocky quarterback. So I saw a YouTube video and someone made a comment on that YouTube video. In that comparison, I couldn't agree more. They said, and I quote, well, I can't pull it up because I would have to go onto YouTube. That would just take too long. But they said, and I quote, Diego Pavia is what the media likes to treat or likes to think Shedeur Sanders is. And for anybody that doesn't know, the media and even NFL fans love to act like Shedeur Sanders is this super cocky quarterback, that he's ungrateful. He doesn't like this, doesn't like that. We all know the whole story that supposedly broke out that he could have gone to the Ravens, or he could have gone to the Ravens and he rejected their offer and went to the Browns, which I don't know how entirely possible that is. But again, we're not going to focus on that. I mean, maybe when they were on the board, he told them, hey, we don't want to get into that. But people wanted to say, specifically the media and NFL fans wanted to treat him like he was some super snotty, cocky, over this and that. They had all these negatives, and yet he really wasn't. But you can't blame him for some of the arrogance he maybe showed, because that comes from his dad, Deion Sanders. But I think that comes less from a place of him being overconfident, more of a guy that's like, I know my abilities and I know I could be a good QB for the team I get drafted by. But guess what? He didn't win the Heisman. He didn't get all these crazy awards. He fell down to the 7th round when he got drafted by the Cleveland freaking Browns, who also drafted a quarterback way before him. And yet you didn't have him going on social media saying, F the Browns, F the NFL. How could they do this to me? Oh my goodness, I'm so hurt. Oh, F college football, F whoever won this, because I don't like that they won this award. He didn't do any of that kind of stuff. So, but then you look at Diego Pavia, and when the Heisman race was going, and Dov Kleiman, they finally got a little bit more to the story where they said, trending, former Vanderbilt QB Diego Pavia went clubbing in NYC after losing the Heisman race to Fernando Mendoza. He bought a sign that said F Indiana. Fast forward 5 months, and now he's undrafted. One of the biggest downfalls in college football history. And I'm going to play this video here. I'm not even really going to turn my camera off, because it's only a 10-second video, so I can play it in the background and just kind of sit and react with you guys. But then I'm also going to pull up another thing from Diego Pavia after he didn't get drafted. But this was the esteemed quarterback that you want to put a good representation of yourself heading into the draft. For teams to look at you, you're going to be possibly the future face of a team or a franchise, and this is how he carried himself when he did not win the Heisman this year. That's Diego Pavia right there. He's got his middle finger up. He had his party, looks like with his girlfriend and stuff, all yelling, and has a sign saying F Indiana, flipping them off, all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, see, that's the kind of arrogance that the media likes to treat Shedeur Sanders, and you don't see a single thing Shedeur has ever done like that. And you can now see why teams didn't draft him. Now, there's more people who are going more in the in-depth of it, saying no, while yes, that could be a part of it, how he plays just doesn't work with NFL schemes. But I think this had a lot to do with it. I don't think a team wants to invest in a quarterback who is this arrogant. And then to add to it, it's like you already had this against you, but then he did this. Now, he did have to put a public apology out, but that does not change the fact that, let me see here. that does not change the fact that he went on his Instagram when he did not get drafted by anyone. When Diego Pavia did not get drafted. Okay, so they didn't put this. Let's see here. Now, I don't know. Maybe none of this is real, but let's see. Yeah, because this was the screenshot I was originally going to pull up here where it says, F the NFL, I write my own path. But then apparently that it got revealed this was a fake screenshot. Diego Pavia did not post this. This account is satire and stated as much in comments. I don't know. But then there's another image going around. So maybe this isn't true. I don't know. But yeah, so even this looks like it got edited and stuff. So I don't know. Maybe we don't trust this. But I was hearing stuff that apparently he had to post some kind of apology. So I don't know how true it is. But still, that doesn't take away the fact that this guy, after not winning the Heisman, was very arrogant. And that's what he had to make an apology for. But still, you could see why a team maybe wouldn't want to invest in him because they're seeing a guy who's extremely arrogant and does not respect or appreciate the opportunities he's given. But over the weekend, it was then reported that the Ravens were going to invite Diego Pavia for training camp to essentially see what they have there with the quarterback. Well, the Ravens said F that, and it was reported by Adam Schefter literally today at 1:04 p.m. Ravens signing undrafted free agent QB Diego Pavia to 3-year deal. They signed him. And here's the funniest thing is that even though they invited him to the training camp, they actually had signed another quarterback too. So they now have 2 undrafted quarterbacks in that QB room behind, if I'm correct, Tyler Huntley and Lamar Jackson. So that's like at least 4 QBs that will be battling it out for the backup QB position. But hey, all I can say is this. I mean, I don't want to root for the downfall for any young player. I hope that he had a humbling experience. I hope that he got humbled. He realized that maybe he was putting himself a little too high up there. He now realizes that he was too cocky, and we'll have to see. All I can say is I hope that this was a humbling experience for him. You now have an opportunity to prove yourself of being a reliable quarterback. You're in Baltimore, considered one of the best teams out there when it comes to their QBs, and you get to possibly learn under Lamar Jackson of all people. Like that's pretty good. That's a pretty good setup right there. So I'm wishing the best for Diego Pavia. I hope he gets the opportunity to show what he's got. We'll see what happens. Your boy will definitely keep you guys posted and updated if he does end up making it with the Ravens as a third-string quarterback or even as the backup QB, or who knows. Some people have even said he might even get a QB change where they might turn him into a tight end or something. But, hey, it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens have in store for Diego Pavia and if he makes it into this league. But share your opinions down below. Excuse me, guys. I had to sneeze right there. But share your opinions down in the chat and comment below. What do you think? Do you think he deserves this second chance to be able to perform in the league and get an opportunity to be a third string or backup QB? Or do you think that he needed a little bit more of a humbling experience? But we're going to move on to our next thing here involving the draft, and that is, now we'll see as I go over this first part, because if it turns out that we start getting close to the end of my video, I may or may not go over my overall grades of every team's draft, but I at least wanted to give my personal grades on the first round. Now, as I've explained before, there are at least 7 rounds in the draft, where each round teams have their different picks. They go in there, they try to get whatever players they can at the best positions that are left available. If they can't find the best position left available, they will then go for whatever the best player is that's left available. And what we're going to do here is I want to go over each team's number one first round pick, not number one, their first round pick in the draft, and give you kind of my opinions on what do I think on each of these picks. Do I agree with them? Do I like them? Do I disagree with them? Do I think they could have done better? And hey, this is kind of open too. If you are a football fan or you do know a little bit about football, share in the chat. What do you think? Do you like my little grades that I give your team on who they drafted? But again, we got possibly 10 minutes, maybe a little bit over before we end this, so I'm going to get this started. First off, we got to talk about the Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders, as we all knew this was happening. When we saw they had the number one overall pick, we knew this was the guy they would end up drafting, and that was Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner and the college football champion from Indiana. Fernando Mendoza got drafted number one overall to the Raiders, and this one, I would give this easily an A. This alone, I got to give it an A to the Raiders. We knew they were going into a new season where they didn't really have any good QB play. Geno Smith sucked over there in Las Vegas, and considering everything they were doing, they got Brock Bowers. They got Brock Bowers. They have Ashton Genty. They They picked up Tyler Linderbaum, the top center in free agency. So they made a lot of moves to prepare for whichever young QB they would go for, and we knew they had to go for a young QB. They got Clint Kubiak, the new head coach of the team, who just won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks as their offensive coordinator. So I have to give this an A. This was the highest rated quarterback of this draft class. It was really only him and Ty Simpson, who we will be talking about a little bit later in this part of the video. But it has to be an A. They had to draft a quarterback, and with the number one overall pick, they drafted the quarterback ahead of them. And Fernando Mendoza, there's a lot why this gets an A, because he's going into an environment where the guy who's going to be playing in front of him, who's going to mentor him, is Kirk Cousins. And a lot of people have said that Fernando Mendoza shares a lot of traits to Fernando Mendoza. And so this now gives an opportunity for him to develop, to get better, learn this system. He already now has some weapons, and he gets to learn under a really solid quarterback in Kirk Cousins, who has played really solid. He's played really well. And so I think this has to get an A. They needed a quarterback 100%, and I think that I would say they have drafted their franchise QB. But next is number 2 overall, the Jets. No, this was a one that was the first shock of the night, and that was they went for Texas Tech edge David Bailey. A lot of people thought the Jets were going to draft Arvell Reese, and were surprised they went for David Bailey. I know a lot of people think they should have gone Arvell Reese, but overall, they still got themselves an edge, a high-end edge. And honestly, and Matt Miller, he's comparing him to Nick Bonitto from the Denver Broncos. That's a great comparison. Nick Bonitto is a great edge rusher. And I just got to say, I think this has to get an A. They needed to work on that defense. That defense was piss poor from New York last year. They didn't get a single interception, which is unheard of. That's a record in itself and not a good one. So they needed to fix that front line, especially considering they sent away Quentin Williams. A lot of their other edges are getting older, so they need to get another edge. And I think David Bailey will be a good fit there over in New York. And trust me, with me giving an A, we're not done with the New York Jets, because they actually have a few more first-round picks that we'll be talking about later in this part. But overall, I give David Bailey an A for the Jets here. I think this was a good pick. I think that he's going to fit in pretty nicely with that Aaron Glenn defense, and I think he's going to fit a little bit more of the scheme they wanted more than the Arvell Reese pick. But we're now going to move on to the number 3. This was the big shocker. Now, a lot of people projected that this team was going to select Jeremiah Love, but there were still people suggesting or holding out hope that the Titans would have selected Jeremiah Love. I even know I got an uncle out there who could be watching this video right now. I know he was hoping that his Titans would select Jeremiah Love at number 4, but sadly, the Cardinals swooped in with that number 4 pick, and they picked him. I know people don't like it because the Cardinals don't really have a good O-line. They don't really have a star quarterback. So a lot of people don't like the pick overall, but I can't give this anything more than an A+. I can't. They got overall considered the best talent in this draft. Jeremiah Love across all boards has been said as the best pick, the best bang for your buck player that you could get from this draft. And I have to give it an A. I know they don't have an O-line. I know they don't have a star quarterback, but how can I go against this when we saw with the Raiders? The Raiders did a similar thing. They drafted Ashton Genty in the first round. Everybody was like, why would you draft Ashton Genty when you don't even have an O-line to open up lanes for him? You don't have a star quarterback. Like, why would you go for him? And we saw they sucked. That O-line was terrible. Ashton Genty couldn't get a single thing going on the ground game. So I could see the Cardinals maybe, possibly doing something similar to the Raiders. They got their star running back, and now they could start to build around him, build that O-line, get a star QB of the future. And who knows, if they suck this year, they could do what the Raiders did, get the number 1 overall pick and try to get maybe Arch Manning or Dante Moore in the next year's draft in 2027. But I have to give this an A+ for the Cardinals. And he's being compared to Reggie Bush, which is a legend for the Saints right there in the running back area room. So that's a great comparison. Jeremiah Love, best talent in the draft. I think they got to get an A+ 100%. Let me see here. I see someone put something in the chat. We also got Rancho Cucamonga in the house. Okay, I know I got some family out there in Rancho Cucamonga. Glad you guys are watching. Glad you guys are watching. Glad to be seeing that Rancho Cucamonga representation up in here. Oh, I see that too. He watching. Okay, so I do know that that's the confirmation that uncle is watching, and he probably is very upset that his Titans weren't able to walk away with Jeremiah Love. But funny enough, we are about to talk about the Titans, who drafted at number 4. They picked up. Ooh, my nose here. I haven't noticed that I got to do this a lot with my nose. My bad, guys. Sorry about that. The Titans, they drafted at the number 4 pick in Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. This one, while I would have loved the Jeremiah Love pick going to the Titans, because the Titans do not have they got to try to hope and cross their fingers they get one more year out of Tyjae Spears or Tony Pollard. So I would have loved Jeremiah Love, but I got to give an A to the Titans with Carnell Tate. They got themselves a star receiver. I mean, we already know they got Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants in the free agency. They picked him up from the Giants. So they got their number 2 receiver, and they look like they got their number 1 receiver. So at least the Titans are getting their number 1 pick from last year in Cam Ward, a guy to launch that ball to. And Carnell Tate, there's 3 receivers in this draft that are basically seen as the top receivers. Mekhi Lemon, who we are going to talk about, Carnell Tate, and Jordan Tyson, who is another receiver we will be talking about. But yeah, Carnell Tate, I think this was a great pick for the Titans. I think they got their star receiver for Cam Ward to throw to, so I got to give this an A on their draft pick. Next up, the New York Giants, Arvell Reese from Ohio State, edge. linebacker, but he normally plays in that edge, but he's swapped around a little bit too. He was seen as kind of the really top player next to Jeremiah Love, and he got picked at number 5. Like I said earlier, people thought the Jets were going to pick him up, but it looks like the other New York team, Giants, picked him up. And man, at first I wanted to give this like an A-, and I might still give it an A- because this team, the Giants, they still have Kayvon Thibodeau, which there's been rumors they might trade him. They got Brian Burns. They got Abdul Carter. And now they got Arvell Reese. That's 4 edges. That's a lot. That's a very overpacked edge room where it seems more than likely they may end up losing Kayvon Thibodeau to a trade, and they're preparing for that. And if that is the case, then I would give this more of an A+, but I think I got to meet in the middle of an A- and an A+ and give them an A. He's a star talent of a linebacker. He had great scores in the combine. He ran a 4.46 second 40-yard dash. He was very explosive in that run. And even you got the little video here of his little draft profile. But still, I think this was a great pickup for the Giants, especially after they lost Dexter Lawrence II in a trade with the Cincinnati Bengals. And so, yeah, I think that they picked up a very good guy to add to that front defensive line to go after the quarterback. And, yeah, this has to get an A. I don't want to give it an A+ because I think that they might have overstuffed that edge room, but they overall they delivered on making sure that front defensive line is good. And funny enough, his comparison from Matt Miller is Abdul Carter, who he'll be playing with. So, yeah, I got to give that an A for the Giants. Next up, this is going to be a controversial one, but I got to be honest with you guys. I did not like this pick from the Chiefs. Mansour Delane from LSU, cornerback, to the Chiefs. I did not like this pick. And not because Mansour Delane is a bad player. He's a great cornerback. Considering that Jermod McCoy, the original highest rated corner in this draft, who sadly has a knee injury that caused him to fall all the way down in the draft, where the Raiders picked him up late, which I think they picked up a great guy. But still, considering that his injury was really that bad, Mansour Delane kind of propped up as that new big name for everybody to kind of have their eyes on, you know? And with that, the reason I didn't like this is because while they got a cornerback, and we did talk about a couple weeks ago that the Chiefs did trade away 2 of their star corners to the Rams, while they fixed the cornerback, I think they could have went for something a little bit more what they needed. And the reason I say that is because they also traded. They traded with the Browns to get this pick. And they traded other picks with the Browns to move up. And you would have thought they would have moved up to maybe get Jordan Tyson, who was still available. Mekhi Lemon, who was still available, but I think they would have maybe gone more Jordan Tyson. And they could have traded up to get Ruben Bain. And the reason I say those guys is because, one, we do not know if Rashid Rice is still going to be on the Chiefs, considering his whole legal stuff going on. So he may not even still be a Kansas City Chief next year. So they really should have considered getting another receiver to pair up with Xavier Worthy. And if they went for Ruben Bain, that I think that should have been the pick, was Ruben Bain, edge, because their most well-known edge rusher on that team is George Karlaftis, and that's it. So they really needed to get another edge rusher to pair up with him, and they went corner. And I fear this was a pick that was more of a desperation pick. They traded up, they saw Mansour Delane, and were like, we did just lose 2 corners in trades, so we kind of have to appease the fans, appease the owners that we are acknowledging this fault, and let's go and get him. And I think they really could have stayed at the number 9 pick, grabbed Mansour Delane, and then they would have gotten the grade. But sadly, I got to give them an A-. I can't give them a B+, because that would be too harsh on Mansour Delaney. I think he's a really good corner, but I cannot give them anything higher than an A- because they could have really gone for Ruben Bain or Makai Lemon / Jordan Tyson. Positions I think were a little bit more needed than corner. And the reason I also say that is because Chiefs fans love to talk about how the Chiefs will pick up corners in like the third or later draft picks or the later rounds and develop them into star corners. And this is one of those times they didn't do that. But yeah, that's my pick. That's my grade. I give him an A-. I know we still got a few more. We might have to start speed running because I know that we are getting closer and closer to the end of this show. But we'll try. Probably what I'll do is we'll try to get down to at least the 10. We might just have to get to the 10, and who knows, we might do like a little bit of a part 2 later in the week. Who knows? We might, yeah, that might be the plan. That might be the plan what we're going to do here, guys. We might do a little bit of a part 2 because, as you can see, there's at least 32 picks we got to go over, and I probably am not going to be able to get over each and every one in efficient manner. So we'll try to get to at least the number 10 pick with the Giants, give my grade there, and then we'll continue maybe in like a more shorter format to break down my other grades for the other teams. But next up, we got the Washington Commanders, who selected another high defensive player in Sonny Styles from Ohio State. Ohio State is winning, man. Anybody that might have went to Ohio State, you have to feel proud because you had 3 players in the top 10 already get drafted by teams. And Sonny Styles, he got picked up by the Commanders. I got to give this an A pick. This was needed, considering that the Commanders, their biggest need was that linebacker room, their defense, because everybody talked about how bad that Commanders defense was last year. It was horrendous. And the other thing, their defensive room was, how do I say this in a delicate, kind way? Old. Their defense was old. Their defense couldn't stay healthy for the whole season. So they needed to start, everybody said it, they needed to start getting younger, and they did just that with Sonny Styles. This is the guy that everybody was talking about. His comparison from Matt Miller is Fred Warner. And I got to give this an A. I think that this is a smart move in the right direction for the Commanders to get younger in that defense. They picked up a beast. From what I've heard from a lot of Ohio State fans, they got a beast in Sonny Styles, and I can't wait to see how he looks on that defense. But now let's get on to our next one here. We just talked about this receiver, and that is Jordan Tyson, who was picked up by the New Orleans Saints. I have another uncle who is a huge New Orleans Saints fan, and I know that he's probably been raving, telling all of his football friends and family that we got Jordan Tyson. Tyler Shuck got himself a star receiver to throw to with Chris Olave. And yeah, I can't deny it. You got yourself a stud of a receiver, Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. I've heard a lot of good things about him. Again, as I compared, he was one of the top 3 receivers in the first round that was talked about. It was Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, and Makai Lemon, and he got picked up by the Saints. And now Tyler Shuck, he gets himself a number 2 or possible new number 1 receiver to throw this ball to. And this is who I thought the Chiefs should have gone for, and yet they didn't. And I got to give this an A to the Saints. The Saints looked really solid towards the end of the season, and it looks like they're doing everything they can to build this team around Tyler Shuck. And I can't wait to see what they got in store. This is an A. I think they got themselves a good receiver to throw this ball to. Next, and his comparison is George Pickens, who we just talked about, who is also a really solid receiver. So that's a good comparison there. Next up, the Browns. Spencer Fano, the offensive tackle from Utah. This was the pick they traded away to the Chiefs. We all know they gave the Chiefs the 6th pick while the Browns got the 9th pick, and they were able to get offensive tackle. This, I got to give this an A-. They needed to fix that offensive line because the Browns had a really bad offseason where they lost a majority, if not all, of their offensive line players, and they needed to fix that offensive line so then whoever is their new starting quarterback has people to protect them. And Spencer Fano was one of the highest-rated offensive linemen that was out there, and they went out there, they got him, and now whoever it is, whether it's Deshaun Watson, or Shedeur Sanders. They'll have a good offensive lineman to protect them, keep them safe, so they have more time in that pocket to throw the ball. So I got to give that an A-. I think that they did a good job there. And honestly, overall, the Browns, I think, had a good draft. But, yeah, I got to give them a A-. His comparison is to Austin Jackson. So that's another solid pick right there for the Browns. Next up, our final pick we're going to talk about is Francis. Well, I actually do have one more pick I am going to talk about. It isn't in line with it going in order, but I got to talk about it because I got to share my opinions on it. But the New York Giants, they had another pick, and that was Francis Maui-Noa. This was what they picked up from the Cincinnati Bengals after they traded Dexter Lawrence away to them. They picked up offensive tackle Francis Maui-Noa from Miami college team. This is an A. They picked up another high-rated offensive lineman. I'm surprised he fell down to them, considering that the Browns looked like they were in need of an offensive tackle, but they went Fano instead of Maui-Noa. And the Giants, they walked away with a stud of a lineman that's going to keep Jackson Dart protected, especially considering that this team, they want to fix Jackson's Dart taking those concussions to the head. They don't want him to end his career too soon. So what better way than having a solid offensive line to keep him protected so he doesn't have to go out there running and taking these hard hits. Let me see here. I got something in the chat. I see we got Compton, P2P, community development in the house. Welcome, Compton. I'm glad we got some representation in here from that location. We love having when people tune in. But, yeah, like I said, I got to give this an A for the Giants. I think this was a solid pick for them to build up on that offensive line. And I think that they're going to have a good – I think they're building really good for Jackson Dart. And, honestly, the Giants – look out. Giants might end up being a really solid team. His comparison is to Darnell Wright, who's currently playing right now in the league. He's with the Bears. And, yeah, he's a good offensive lineman. So, Giants, got to give him an A. But I'm cheating a little bit. Like I said, we are going to end this episode soon. And I will talk about in future episodes of the other picks. Like I said, I think I'm going to cut down on, like, some shorter episodes this week. Like, maybe YouTube Shorts. Or maybe just a regular YouTube video where I'll talk about the other picks. But I had to cheat here because I had to talk about this pick. The Los Angeles Rams. Now, I know my mother, who is a diehard Rams fan, is probably watching. I think she probably is. I'm sorry, Mom. I got to give your Rams a B+ on this pick with Ty Simpson. I like the pick for Ty Simpson as a player because, one, he gets to go into a great organization as the Rams. He gets to develop under Matthew Stafford, the former MVP winner and Super Bowl winner of the Los Angeles Rams. He gets to develop and learn under him. He has Sean McVay as his head coach, which is really good. Really, he's going to a place that any young quarterback is going to want to go to develop and become a future starter or honestly a future Super Bowl winner. So overall for Ty Simpson as a player, he's going to a great location. I don't like the pick. I like the pick for the Rams in a future sense, as in once Matthew Stafford retires or maybe gets hurt, Ty Simpson is going to be a solid replacement to come in there. But the reason I don't like this pick, and I have to give it a B+, is because the Rams had two other options that I feel would have just been – the Rams have been – how do I put this? The Rams have been in a win-now mode. They've been in a win-now mode. Matthew Stafford, he's not getting any younger, which lines up with going for Ty Simpson, but he's not getting any younger. The Rams have been proving by a lot of their moves they are in a win-now state. And Ty Simpson is not a win-now pick, especially at pick 13. He's not a win-now pick. A win-now pick would have been Mekhi Lemon, who was still available, another receiver that we just talked about briefly as being one of the top 3 receivers discussed, or a edge in Ruben Bain, who was still available. Those were 2 guys that were available in that draft that would have been win-now picks. And Uh, what's the downside? That's the downside, is that the Rams, they're currently in a win now mode. And win now would have suggested they would have gone out and go for a new receiver because, one, they have Puka Nacua, which, mind you, he has submitted himself into a rehab after all this stuff that's been going on with him. You might have heard it. He's been sadly going into a lot of situations, so we don't even know what his future is going to be with the Rams. Devontae Adams, he's getting old. Great player. He was leading the league in touchdowns last year, but he's getting older. So if he goes hurt, it would have been it just would have made a lot more sense to go for a younger receiver, Mekhi Lemon, who's a lot faster. He could step in as that number 2 receiver and be able to have someone to throw that ball to. Also, another person I forgot, the tight end, Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, who was also available. They're going after Diggs, and Donate is about to produce. Devontae. No, don't get me wrong. Me as a Packers fan, I know Devontae's going to produce. I just think they should have gone for a younger receiver, or they could have gone for Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, that young tight end, especially considering that the Rams, their formation on how they run that offense is they run with typically 3 tight ends on the field. And right now, their most known tight ends is Tyler Higbee, who is injury prone, and what's the other guy's name? I can't remember. I know it's Robinson. Yeah, I know the typing, the spelling be a little bit off, but they got another guy, Colby Parkinson. These are guys that they don't really lift the bar as tight ends, so you would have thought they would have drafted another young tight end to fit in there. Now they did, thankfully, in there. And I know, not proven, but still, Ty Simpson, it's a great overall. Like I said, I give a B+ because it's a great future plan. It's just not a solid win now plan to match up with everything the Rams have been doing. Like we've talked about in the previous episodes, they traded for Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson from the Chiefs. You don't do that unless you are in a win now Super Bowl mode. And drafting a young quarterback at pick 13 isn't a win now move. Now, I'm not saying that the Rams shouldn't have or couldn't have drafted Ty Simpson in the first round. I am not saying that at all. I think that this is a great pick, future pick. I just don't know if a pick 13. If the Rams loved him as much as they claim they do, I think they should have at least used pick 13 on Kenyon Sadiq or Mekhi Lemon or Ruben Bain. Hey, make that defense even more scary than it already is. And then try to find a trade partner to trade back in and then get Ty Simpson. Because I think 100% they would have found a way to get him, and they could have at least won. But hey, maybe like you're saying, this was the only option they could have done. Me personally, I just think they could have gotten a receiver or a tight end who was still available there. But hey, what do I know? This could end up working. Matthew Stafford may end up getting hurt. Ty Simpson might jump right in and end up proving to be the franchise QB of the future. But share your opinions down below in that chat. I already see a few opinions on it that thinks that this could have been a good pick. Again, we'll never know. It's all about, we got to watch how they develop and how they prove themselves once they come into the league. Ty Simpson, I mean, congratulations to him. I think that like I said, he's found a great place to develop, and I think he can be the future quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, I know we didn't get into all of the picks that were made in this draft. And like I said before, I'm going to be probably posting out some little short YouTube videos going over the other picks I did not go over with my brief grades, talking about each and every one of them and what I think and if I feel that it was a good fit for said team to pick them up. Yeah. Perfect pick. You proved it. Thank you. But yeah, like I said, we'll make some shorter videos, talk about the other picks I did not get to address in this, as I don't want this to go too long in the episode. I don't want everybody to be staying up watching me talk about all this football. But again, I want to just thank everybody for tuning in. I love each and every one of you. As always, stay safe, take care of yourselves. And this is your boy, signing out.